"I don't want to feed you anymore," my son Marcus said to me on a Tuesday afternoon. Then he got me a cleaning job to earn my keep. What he didn't know was that I'd be mopping floors in a building I owned. This story has more twists than a Vegas poker table, and trust me, the house always wins in the end. If you've ever had someone underestimate you completely, hit subscribe and stick around. Drop a comment telling me what city you're listening from, because what happened to me could happen in your neighborhood too. My name is Ambrose Finch, and I'm 68 years old. For the past 8 years, since my wife Eleanor passed, I've been living quietly in a modest 2-bedroom house on Maple Street. My neighbors see an ordinary retiree who tends his small garden and drives a 12-year-old Honda Civic. They have no idea who I really am, and neither does my son Marcus. The call came at 3:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. "Dad, I found you a job," he said, his voice carrying that tone I'd grown to recognize, the one that meant he'd already made decisions about my life without asking. "A job?" I set down my coffee and walked to the kitchen window. "Marcus, I'm retired." "Yeah, well, retirement's a luxury you can't afford anymore." Papers rustled in the background. "Look, I'm tired of carrying you financially. Sarah and I have been talking, and we both agree. You need to start pulling your weight." I stayed quiet. In my experience, people reveal more when you let them talk. The positions at North Point Tower downtown. Night cleaning crew, $12 an hour, 4 nights a week. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. North Point Tower. I almost smiled, but caught myself. "What time?" 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The building manager's name is Rodriguez. He's expecting you Thursday. "I see." "Dad, this isn't a request. Sarah's pregnant again, the mortgage is killing us, and frankly, we can't keep subsidizing your lifestyle. You're 68, not dead. Time to contribute instead of being dead weight." Dead weight. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. "Marcus," I said carefully, "when you say you can't subsidize my lifestyle, what exactly do you mean?" He sighed, impatient. "The money we've been sending you every month, the bills we've been covering, Sarah calculated it. We're out nearly $2,000 a month keeping you afloat. That stops now." $2,000 a month. I wondered where he thought that money was coming from. I'd never asked him for a dime. "And if I refuse this job? Then you need to find somewhere else to live. We love you, Dad, but love doesn't pay bills. You have 30 days to figure it out. Either take the job or find another arrangement." The line went dead. I stood there for a moment, holding the phone, looking out at my small garden. The tomatoes were coming along nicely. In a few weeks, they'd be ready to harvest. Marcus had no idea that the building where he wanted me to mop floors, North Point Tower, was listed in my property portfolio under Sterling Properties, LLC. He was asking me to clean my own building for $12 an hour. He just made the biggest mistake of his life, but he didn't know it yet. I need to back up and explain how we got here, because Marcus wasn't always this way. Once upon a time, he was a bright kid who asked thoughtful questions and helped me change oil in the garage. But somewhere along the line, things shifted. The shift started about 5 years ago when Eleanor got sick. Cancer moves fast when you're 72, and the medical bills piled up despite our insurance. Marcus and Sarah, they were newlyweds then, offered to help with expenses. I was grateful, but told them it wasn't necessary. That's when Marcus started asking questions about my finances. Where was my retirement money? How much was the house worth? What kind of savings did I have? I gave him simple answers. I'd sold the business years earlier. The house was paid off. I got by on Social Security and a small pension. I lived modestly because that's how Eleanor and I had always lived. What I didn't tell him was the truth. The truth was that Sterling Properties LLC, which I'd founded in 1987, owned 8 commercial buildings in downtown Grand Rapids, plus a small portfolio of residential rentals. The business I'd sold was really a strategic reorganization. I'd kept ownership while bringing in a management company to handle day-to-day operations. My annual income from rental properties alone was $165,000. Add in my investment portfolio, managed through a revocable trust that Patricia Wells had set up in 2019, and my net worth sat comfortably at $6.3 million. But Marcus didn't know any of this, because I'd never seen the need to tell him. Eleanor and I had raised him to work for what he wanted, to understand the value of effort and accomplishment. We'd paid for his college, helped with his wedding, but we'd never handed him a trust fund or made him feel entitled to our wealth. Maybe that was a mistake. The entitled attitude really crystallized after Eleanor's funeral. Marcus started making comments about the house, how it was too much for me to maintain alone, how I should consider downsizing to something more manageable. He suggested assisted living facilities. He brought up power of attorney paperwork. Sarah was worse. She'd walk through Eleanor's house, the house I'd bought with my own money 43 years earlier, and talk about which rooms would be perfect for the nursery when they had kids. She'd comment on how the kitchen needed updating, how the hardwood floors were worth refinishing. They were planning my life like I was already gone. The gambling started around the same time, though I didn't learn about it until much later. Marcus had always been competitive. Poker nights with college friends, occasional trips to the casino with Sarah. But competitive became compulsive, and compulsive became desperate. By the time I pieced it together, Marcus was $95,000 in debt. Credit cards maxed out. Second mortgage taken against their house. Personal loans from friends who were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. The pregnancy Sarah mentioned on the phone? Their second child. They already had 4-year-old Emma, and daycare costs were eating them alive. From Marcus's perspective, I was the problem. Here he was, drowning financially, while his father sat in a paid-off house doing nothing but collecting government checks. Every month that I stayed independent was another month he couldn't access what he believed was rightfully his inheritance. The irony was breathtaking. Marcus was struggling to pay a $1,800 mortgage while I collected $13,750 monthly from rental properties he didn't know existed. He was borrowing money at 18% interest, while I had $1.9 million sitting in diversified investments, earning 7% annually. He saw a burden. I saw a teaching opportunity he wasn't ready to learn from. The cleaning job offer was actually genius, in a twisted way. It solved multiple problems from his perspective. It got me out of the house for 8 hours a night. It provided documentation that I was able-bodied and capable of work, useful for any future power of attorney discussions, and it put me in a position of obvious dependency. Hard to maintain dignity when you're 78 years old pushing a mop cart. What Marcus didn't understand was that I'd been in commercial real estate for 40 years. I knew every building downtown, every property manager, every maintenance contract. North Point Tower wasn't just some random office building where he'd found me a job through connections. North Point Tower was the crown jewel of my portfolio, a 12-story mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor, offices on floors 2 through 10, and luxury condos on the top 2 floors. I'd bought it in 1994 for $2.1 million when the previous owner hit financial trouble. Today it was worth $4.2 million and generated $28,000 monthly in rental income. Rodriguez, the building manager Marcus mentioned, sent me detailed reports every quarter. We'd spoken just last week about upgrading the HVAC system on floors 7 and 8. Marcus wanted me to mop the floors of my own building for $12 an hour. The game was about to begin, and he didn't even know we were playing. Thursday evening arrived faster than I expected. At 10:45 p.m., I stood outside North Point Tower wearing work clothes I'd bought that afternoon, plain khakis, a gray polo shirt, and steel-toed boots that felt foreign on my feet. The building rose 12 stories above me, its windows glowing against the October darkness. I'd walked these halls as the owner countless times, but never at night, never through the service entrance. Tonight, I was just another aging worker, grateful for minimum wage. Rodriguez met me at the loading dock. He was a solid man in his 50s with careful eyes and calloused hands, the kind of person who notices details because his job depends on it. "You must be Finch," he said, looking me over. "Your son spoke highly of your work ethic." "Just grateful for the opportunity," I replied. He handed me a security badge and a time clock card. Badge gets you into the building after hours. Clock in and out every shift. Payroll runs every 2 weeks. You'll be working with Jenny tonight. She'll show you the routes. Jenny was a tired-looking woman in her 40s who moved with the efficiency of someone who'd been cleaning office buildings for decades. She handed me rubber gloves and a spray bottle filled with industrial cleaner that smelled like artificial lemons. We start on 12 and work our way down, she explained as we entered the service elevator. Executive suites first. They pay premium rent, so they get premium service. Take your time up there. Miss a spot, and Rodriguez hears about it. The 12th floor was home to Hartwell & Associates, a law firm that specialized in corporate litigation. I'd met Jonathan Hartwell several times at Chamber of Commerce events, back when I was openly running Sterling Properties. Tonight, I was invisible. Just another pair of hands emptying trash bins and wiping down conference tables where million-dollar deals were negotiated. Your son said you were having some financial troubles, Jenny said as we worked. A lot of older folks finding themselves in tight spots these days. Social Security don't stretch like it used to. I nodded, playing the part, trying to stay independent as long as possible. Good for you. Nothing wrong with honest work, no matter how old you are. By 2 a.m., we'd reached the 8th floor. This was where Patterson Industries leased a full floor for their accounting operations. Marcus worked here as a sales manager, though his office was actually on the 6th floor. I'd been in this building dozens of times for tenant meetings and maintenance walkthroughs, but tonight I was seeing it from a different angle, literally on my hands and knees, scrubbing baseboards in bathrooms. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every square foot I cleaned generated revenue that went directly into my bank account. The carpet I was vacuuming, the windows I was washing, the marble lobby I was mopping. I'd approved every renovation, every upgrade, every improvement over the past 30 years. Around 4 a.m., Jenny took her break, and I found myself alone on the 3rd floor. This was where Dr. Sarah Mitchell had her medical practice, the same Dr. Mitchell who'd been monitoring my blood pressure and cholesterol for the past 6 years. Her waiting room was filled with magazines about healthy aging and retirement planning. The irony was suffocating. I was wiping down her reception desk when my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Hope the first night went well. Character building, right? See you at family dinner Sunday. Sarah's making pot roast. Character building. I set the phone down and continued cleaning. The shift ended at 7 a.m. as downtown Grand Rapids woke up around us. Office workers in expensive suits walked past the loading dock where Jenny and I were finishing up, invisible to them in our gray uniforms. I clocked out, collected my badge, and walked to my Honda Civic as the city came alive. The drive home took 12 minutes. I pulled into my driveway, sat in the car for a moment, and looked at my house, the modest 2-bedroom ranch that Marcus thought was too much for me to afford. Then I went inside, poured myself a cup of coffee, and called Patricia Wells. Patricia, it's Ambrose. We need to talk. But first, I had exactly 72 hours to decide how much my son was going to regret this decision. Patricia Wells had been my attorney for 15 years, ever since she'd handled Eleanor's estate planning when cancer first appeared. She was sharp, methodical, and completely unimpressed by family drama, which made her perfect for what I had in mind. We met at her office Friday afternoon. Patricia was in her early 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, and the kind of direct gaze that had intimidated opposing counsel in courtrooms for 2 decades. Ambrose, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk, your call yesterday was cryptic. Something about updating your trust documents? I sat down and pulled out my phone, showing her Marcus's text from the cleaning job. Her eyebrows rose as she read, Your son got you a job? Cleaning your own building? He doesn't know I own it. He thinks I'm living on Social Security and whatever financial help he's been providing. I leaned back in the chair. Apparently, he's been under the impression he's been sending me money every month. Patricia frowned. Have you been receiving money from Marcus? Not a penny, but somehow he believes he's been supporting me financially. His wife calculated they're out nearly $2,000 a month keeping me afloat, according to their conversation. That's unusual. Patricia opened her laptop and pulled up my files. Let me review your current financial position. She scrolled through the trust documents, property holdings, and investment accounts. Sterling Properties LLC owned 8 commercial buildings with a total value of $6, $3 million. The investment portfolio held another $1.9 million in diversified assets. Monthly rental income averaged $165,000 before expenses. Ambrose, you're hardly destitute. In fact, you're in the top 5% of retirees financially. Why would Marcus think otherwise? Because that's what I told him. When Eleanor got sick, when the bills started piling up, I wanted to see how he'd react. Would he offer help out of love, or would he start calculating his inheritance? Patricia nodded slowly. And what did you discover? Both. He offered to help, but he also started asking a lot of questions about my assets. Questions that felt more like an inventory than concern. I told her about the gambling debts, the entitled comments, the assumption that my house would someday be theirs. Patricia took notes, her expression growing more serious. So, the cleaning job is what exactly? A power play? It's a test. Marcus believes he's in control now, that he's finally found a way to make me dependent and manageable. He's forcing me into a position where I have to accept his charity and guidance. And you want to... what? Teach him a lesson? I considered the question carefully. I want him to understand consequences. For 40 years, I built a business based on integrity, hard work, and treating people fairly. I never handed him anything he didn't earn because I believed that would make him stronger. But somehow, he's developed the idea that he's entitled to my life's work without having contributed to it. Patricia was quiet for a moment, studying my file. Ambrose, what exactly are you asking me to do? I want to restructure the trust. Remove Marcus as beneficiary, at least temporarily. I also want to understand my legal position if this becomes a family dispute. Are you talking about disinheritance? I'm talking about accountability. If Marcus wants to treat me like a dependent, then perhaps he should understand what actual dependency looks like. Patricia pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. This is complex, Ambrose. Family trust litigation can get ugly quickly. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever it takes to restore some balance to this relationship. She worked for about an hour, cross-referencing trust documents and Michigan estate law. When she finally looked up, her expression was serious. Here's what I can tell you. The revocable trust we set up in 2019 gives you complete control over asset distribution during your lifetime. You can modify beneficiaries, add conditions, or restructure entirely. However, if Marcus has been acting as a financial power of attorney or has any legal claims to support, he hasn't. No power of attorney, no legal guardianship, no documentation of financial support, because none has been provided. Good, that simplifies things considerably. She flipped to a new page. But Ambrose, if you do this, if you remove him from the trust, there's no going back quietly. He'll know something changed when tax documents are filed next year. What if I wanted to accelerate the timeline, make the changes visible sooner? Patricia raised an eyebrow. How much sooner? Marcus seems to believe he has financial control over my life. What if that belief was tested? She was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out another file. Ambrose, I need to ask this directly. Has Marcus done anything that could be considered elder abuse? Financial coercion, threats, manipulation? I thought about the phone call, the ultimatum, the demand that I work or become homeless. He told me I had 30 days to accept the job or find another arrangement. When I asked what that meant, he said I needed to find somewhere else to live. Patricia's pen stopped moving. A 68-year-old man threatened with homelessness unless he accepts employment arranged by his son? That's an accurate summary. Ambrose, what you're describing could constitute elder abuse under Michigan law, financial exploitation specifically. She leaned forward. Are you interested in exploring that angle? I looked out her office window at downtown Grand Rapids, at the buildings I owned, at the life I'd built through decades of careful work and planning. Marcus thought he was calling the shots now. Time to show him what real power looked like. Patricia worked fast when she had that clear direction. By Monday morning, she'd filed the trust amendment paperwork and prepared what she called financial position documentation, a comprehensive overview of my assets that could be deployed if needed. The beauty of a revocable trust, she explained during our Monday meeting, is that you maintain complete control during your lifetime. Marcus was listed as primary beneficiary, but that was always conditional on your approval. And now? Now he's not listed anywhere. If something happened to you tomorrow, your assets would go to Helen, my daughter in Seattle, with instructions to distribute according to a merit-based evaluation of family members. Helen. I hadn't spoken to her in 6 months. Not since Marcus had told me she was too busy with her career to visit for Eleanor's anniversary. Another lie, I was beginning to realize. What about immediate changes? Things Marcus might notice? Patricia smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Well, that depends how involved he's been in your financial life. Do you have any joint accounts, co-signed loans, shared credit lines? I thought carefully. He's been a co-signer on several of his loans over the past 5 years. Car loan, second mortgage, 3 credit cards. I agreed to help establish his credit history. Interesting. So if you were to remove yourself as co-signer, his credit would be entirely dependent on his own payment history and debt-to-income ratio. Patricia pulled out her laptop. Ambrose, do you happen to know what Marcus's current debt situation looks like? I told her about the gambling, the maxed-out credit cards, the financial stress Sarah had mentioned. Patricia's fingers flew over the keyboard as she pulled up credit reporting services and loan databases. This is fascinating, she said after several minutes. Based on public records and credit filings, Marcus currently has approximately $95,000 in outstanding debt across multiple sources. His debt-to-income ratio is close to 60%, which is considered financially dangerous. What happens if I remove myself as co-signer? Well, legally, you can't remove yourself from existing loans without paying them off or refinancing, but you could notify the lenders that you're withdrawing authorization for future credit extensions. More importantly, if Marcus has been relying on your creditworthiness for ongoing financial management, she trailed off, typing rapidly. After a few more minutes, she looked up with raised eyebrows. Ambrose, did you know that Marcus has been using your credit profile to secure additional borrowing over the past 2 years? 3 credit cards and a personal loan, all listing you as primary guarantor? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I didn't authorize any additional guarantees after 2021. These are all dated within the past 18 months. Patricia turned the laptop toward me. Look at this application for a $25,000 personal loan from First National. It lists your income as $48,000 annually and your assets as modest residential property. Marcus signed as primary borrower, but the loan approval was based on your guarantee. I stared at the screen. He's been using my financial profile without my knowledge? It appears so, and based on the income and asset figures he provided, he's been significantly understating your actual financial position. Patricia's expression was grim. Ambrose, this could constitute financial fraud. What are my options? Several. You could notify the lenders immediately that these guarantees were unauthorized. That would trigger a review process and likely result in the loans being called due immediately. Or, you could be more strategic about it, remove yourself gradually, document everything, and let Marcus experience the natural consequences of his actual financial position. I thought about it. Marcus believed he was forcing me into dependency, when in reality he'd made himself financially dependent on credit guarantees I'd never authorized. Patricia, what would happen if those loan guarantees suddenly disappeared, all at once? His credit would collapse virtually overnight. The personal loan would be called due immediately. Banks don't approve $25,000 loans to people with $95,000 in existing debt. The credit cards would be frozen pending review. His mortgage company would be notified of the changed risk profile. How quickly could this happen? Patricia consulted her watch. If we filed the paperwork this afternoon, notification letters would go out Tuesday, electronic credit systems would update by Wednesday morning. By Thursday, Marcus would start getting phone calls. I walked to her office window and looked down at the street. Normal people going about their normal lives, none of them aware that their financial security could disappear with a few legal documents and some phone calls. Do it, I said. Ambrose, are you sure? This is going to cause significant financial distress for Marcus. If he's been counting on your credit support, he's been counting on credit support I never authorized, while simultaneously threatening to make me homeless unless I accept a cleaning job in my own building. I turned back to her. I'd say it's time for some accountability. Patricia nodded and started making notes. I'll need your authorization to contact each lender directly. We'll provide documentation that the guarantees were issued without proper consent and request immediate removal from all accounts. What about the cleaning job? What about it? Should I quit? Patricia considered this. Actually, no. I'd recommend you continue working for now. It demonstrates that you're financially responsible and willing to work, which could be important if this escalates to legal proceedings. Plus, she smiled again, and this time it was genuinely pleasant. Plus, there's something poetic about Marcus paying you $12 an hour to clean a building that generates $28,000 in monthly income for you. I signed the authorization papers, and Patricia promised to file everything that afternoon. As I left her office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. Marcus thought he held all the cards. By Thursday, he'd discovered that the deck had been completely reshuffled. But first, I had a building to clean. The phone calls started Thursday morning at 7:23 a.m., just as I was finishing my coffee after the night shift. I recognized the number. First National Bank. Mr. Finch, this is Janet Morrison from First National. We've received notification that you're disputing the personal loan guarantee for account number ending in 4721. That's correct, I said calmly. I never authorized a guarantee for a $25,000 loan. Sir, we have documentation with your signature. I'm sure you do. What you don't have is my actual authorization. I'd like to review those documents immediately. There was a pause. Mr. Finch, if this guarantee is invalid, the loan becomes due immediately. The borrower would have 30 days to either pay in full or provide alternative collateral. I understand. And you're certain you want to proceed with this dispute? Absolutely certain. The second call came at 9:15 a.m. Marcus, his voice tight with confusion. Dad, I just got a weird call from my bank. Something about a loan guarantee being disputed? Did you... Yes, I did. Silence on the other end. Then, what the hell does that mean? It means I discovered you've been using my credit profile to secure loans I never agreed to co-sign. The bank is reviewing the authorization documentation. Dad, that's impossible. You co-signed that loan last year when we refinanced the house. Marcus, I haven't co-signed anything for you since 2020. And I certainly never authorized you to list my income as $48,000 when applying for credit. Another pause, longer this time. How did you know about the income figure? Because I have copies of the loan applications, all of them. I could hear Marcus breathing, calculating. Dad, if those guarantees are pulled, Sarah and I are going to have serious problems. The personal loan, the credit cards, the second mortgage, they're all connected to your credit profile. Then perhaps you should have discussed these loans with me before applying for them. We needed the money. Emma's daycare costs are killing us. Sarah's pregnancy has complications, and my commissions have been shit this year. You were sitting in that house doing nothing while we were drowning. Sitting in my house, doing nothing with my retirement that I earned through 40 years of work. That's not... Marcus stopped, seeming to realize he was walking into dangerous territory. Dad, look, we can work this out. Come by the house tonight after your shift. We'll talk. What shift? Your cleaning job at North Point Tower. Ah, yes, my job cleaning the building. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Marcus, who told you about an opening for night cleaning crew? I know the building manager, Rodriguez. He mentioned they needed someone reliable. And how exactly do you know Rodriguez? Another pause. This one felt different. Less confusion, more careful consideration. I've done some work there, sales presentations, meetings with clients in the building. What kind of work? Dad, why does this matter? The point is, I found you a job when you needed one. Because I'm curious about your relationship with North Point Tower. You seem very familiar with their staffing needs. Marcus's voice took on an edge of irritation. Look, I'm trying to help you here. If you pull those loan guarantees, you're going to seriously damage your relationship with Sarah and me. Is that what you want? What I want is honesty. What I want is respect. What I want is for my son to stop making decisions about my life without consulting me. Fine. Come to dinner tonight. We'll talk about everything, the loans, the job, whatever's bothering you. I'll be working tonight, remember? Then come by after work. We'll have breakfast. Sarah can make pancakes. Emma would love to see you. Using the grandchild as leverage, Marcus was more desperate than I'd realized. I'll consider it, I said, and hung up. The third call came at 2:30 p.m., waking me from my afternoon nap. Marcus again, but this time his voice carried a different quality. Panic, tightly controlled. Dad, we need to talk, now. What's wrong? My credit cards were just frozen, all of them. The bank called and said there's been a material change in risk assessment for my accounts. I see. Dad, did you remove yourself from other accounts too, not just the personal loan? Marcus, I removed myself from all financial obligations I never actually authorized. As it turns out, there were several. Jesus Christ, Dad, do you understand what you've done? I've got automatic payments set up on those cards. Mortgage, utilities, daycare, insurance. Everything's going to bounce. Then perhaps you should call the companies and arrange alternative payment methods. With what? You've just destroyed my credit. No bank is going to extend new credit to someone who just had 3 accounts frozen and a $25,000 loan called due. I was quiet for a moment, letting him process the full scope of his situation. Marcus, I said finally, 36 hours ago you gave me an ultimatum. Work a minimum wage cleaning job or find somewhere else to live. You told me I was dead weight and that you were tired of carrying me financially. I didn't mean... Now you're discovering that your financial situation was entirely dependent on my creditworthiness you'd been using without my knowledge or consent. Dad, please. Sarah's pregnant. Emma's 4 years old. We've got a mortgage and daycare and medical bills. If you do this, you're going to destroy your own family. I'm not doing anything to you, Marcus. I'm simply requiring you to be responsible for your own financial decisions. That's not... You can't just... Marcus's voice cracked, and for a moment he sounded like the little boy who used to help me in the garage. Please, Dad, we can fix this. We can work together. Just give me a chance to make this right. But it was too late for that conversation. The phone calls had already been made, the paperwork filed, the consequences set in motion. Marcus was about to learn what real powerlessness felt like. Sarah called Friday evening while I was getting ready for my shift. Her voice was thick with tears, and behind her I could hear Emma asking why Mommy was crying. Ambrose, please, she said, skipping any pretense of normal conversation. Marcus told me what happened with the loans. I know you two are having problems, but Emma doesn't understand why you're angry with us. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. Sarah, I'm not angry with Emma. This has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with her. Ambrose, the daycare called today. Our payment bounced. They're asking for 2 weeks' notice if we can't catch up by Monday. I can't afford to miss work, not with the baby coming. What about Marcus's income? His commissions have been terrible this year. We've been living on credit for months, supplementing his paycheck just to cover basic expenses. Sarah's voice broke. Ambrose, we're going to lose the house. Without those credit lines, we can't make the mortgage payment. I closed my eyes. This was getting complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated. Sarah, how much do you know about Marcus's gambling? Silence on the other end. Then quietly, what gambling? The $95,000 in debt he's accumulated. The trips to casinos, the online poker accounts, the loans he's been taking to cover losses. Ambrose, what are you talking about? Marcus doesn't gamble. The conversation stopped. I realized Sarah genuinely had no idea about the scope of Marcus's financial problems. She'd been living in debt without understanding why. Sarah, I think you and Marcus need to have a very serious conversation about your family's financial situation, and I think you need to do it without me involved. But you're the one who pulled the loan guarantees. You're the one who's destroying our credit. I'm the one who discovered that Marcus had been using my financial profile to secure credit without my knowledge. Sarah, did you know he listed my annual income as $48,000 on loan applications? That sounds right. You live on Social Security and a small pension, right? That's what Marcus always said. I felt something twist in my chest. Sarah had been lied to as thoroughly as everyone else. Sarah, I need you to listen very carefully. Marcus has not been telling you the truth about my financial situation. He's also not been telling you the truth about his own financial situation. What do you mean? I mean you need to ask him directly about his debt load, his gambling activities, and exactly how your household has been financing itself for the past 2 years. Ambrose, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared, but not because of me. I hung up and sat in the quiet kitchen for a long moment. Emma was an innocent child caught in a situation she couldn't understand. Sarah was a pregnant woman who'd been kept in the dark about her husband's financial recklessness. And somehow, I was the bad guy for refusing to continue enabling it. The doorbell rang at 8:30 p.m. Through the window, I could see Marcus's car in my driveway. He looked terrible when I opened the door, unshaven, eyes red with stress or sleeplessness, wearing the same clothes he'd had on yesterday. Dad, we need to talk. I have to leave for work in 2 hours. Then we talk now. He pushed past me into the living room. Sarah's been crying for 6 hours straight. Emma keeps asking if Grandpa doesn't love us anymore. Do you understand what you've done? What I've done is require you to be honest about your financial situation. Marcus turned to face me, and I saw something desperate in his expression. Fine. You want honesty? Here's honesty. I'm fucked. Completely, totally fucked. Without your credit backing those loans, I can't cover my debt service. The house goes into foreclosure, the credit cards default, and Sarah finds out that I've been lying to her about our finances for 2 years. What kind of lies? All of it. The gambling debts, the second mortgage, the fact that we've been living paycheck to paycheck while I threw away thousands at poker tables. Marcus slumped into Eleanor's old chair. I told her your credit helped us get better interest rates. I never told her we couldn't qualify for the loans without you. I studied my son, really looked at him for the first time in months. The weight loss, the stress lines around his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly. He was in deeper trouble than I'd realized. Marcus, why didn't you come to me directly? If you were having financial problems, why the elaborate deception? Because you would have asked questions. You would have wanted to know where the money went, why we needed it, what our budget looked like. Marcus's voice rose. And I couldn't tell you that I'd blown through our savings at a fucking casino. So instead, you decided to force me into a cleaning job and threaten me with homelessness. I thought if you were working, if you were busy, you'd stop asking questions about my finances. And maybe, eventually, I could get ahead of the debt. By making me mop floors in my own building. Marcus looked up sharply. What did you say? I'd slipped. The words had come out before I could stop them. Nothing. I misspoke. No, you said my own building. What did you mean? I looked at my son, this desperate, lying, gambling addict who'd threatened to make me homeless, and made a decision. I meant that North Point Tower is owned by Sterling Properties LLC, which is my company. The color drained from Marcus's face. That's impossible. Sterling Properties owns 8 commercial buildings in Grand Rapids. North Point Tower is the largest. I've owned it for 30 years. But you live on Social Security. You drive a 12-year-old Honda. You shop at Goodwill. I live modestly because that's how I choose to live. My net worth is approximately $6.3 million. Marcus stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. 6 million? Give or take. The exact figure depends on current market valuations. But the pension checks, the medical bills, when Mom got sick, the way you live, I live exactly how I want to live. The pension exists, but it's not my primary income. The medical bills were never a hardship, and the way I live reflects my values, not my bank account. Marcus was quiet for a long time, processing. Then, you let me think you were broke. I let you reveal who you really are when you thought I was vulnerable. The truth hung between us like a physical thing. Marcus had shown his true character when he believed I was powerless, and we both knew what that character looked like. So what happens now? He asked finally. Now you learn what accountability feels like. I made a decision that would change everything, but Marcus didn't know it yet. Saturday evening, before my shift, I called Patricia Wells from my kitchen. Patricia, I need to understand something about Michigan law. If I wanted to record a conversation where someone was threatening me, would that be legal? Michigan is a one-party consent state. she said without hesitation. As long as you're part of the conversation, you can record it legally. Are you anticipating threats? I'm anticipating desperation, and desperate people say things they might later regret. Ambrose, are you concerned about your physical safety? I considered the question. Not physical safety, no, but I think Marcus is going to escalate his attempts at manipulation. If that happens, I want documentation. Smart. Do you know how to use recording apps on your phone? I can learn. Sunday afternoon, Patricia walked me through the process. The iPhone had a built-in voice memo app, but she recommended a third-party application called Tape a Call that was specifically designed for phone conversations. The key, she explained, is to be absolutely clear about consent. Since you're party to the conversation, you don't need the other person's permission. But if you plan to use the recording in legal proceedings, you need to ensure the quality is sufficient and the content is clearly audible. What constitutes a legally significant recording? Threats, admissions of criminal behavior, evidence of elder abuse, financial coercion, basically anything that demonstrates illegal activity or behavior that could support civil litigation. I practiced with the app for an hour, recording test conversations and playing them back. The quality was excellent, and the interface was simple enough for someone my age to manage. Patricia, hypothetically, if someone threatened me with physical harm or financial retaliation, and I recorded that threat, what would be my legal options? Depends on the specifics. Physical threats could constitute criminal intimidation. Financial threats against an elderly person could qualify as elder abuse under Michigan statute. Both carry significant penalties. What kind of penalties? Elder abuse can be prosecuted as a felony, depending on the amount involved and the nature of the abuse. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, which includes threats to housing or financial security, carries up to 20 years in prison for cases involving more than $20,000. $20,000? Marcus's authorized debt was already well above that threshold, and his unauthorized use of my credit had involved much more. Ambrose, what exactly are you planning? I'm planning to give Marcus one more opportunity to demonstrate his character. If he chooses poorly, I want evidence. Monday evening, I sent Marcus a text. Need to discuss family situation. Call me Tuesday evening after 8 p.m. Tuesday dragged slowly. I worked my shift at North Point Tower, spending 8 hours cleaning offices where million-dollar deals were negotiated, while my own family situation spiraled toward its conclusion. Jenny asked if I was feeling all right. Apparently, I seemed distracted. Just family stuff, I told her. Nothing I can't handle. At 8:15 p.m., right on schedule, Marcus called. I started the recording app before answering. Marcus, Dad, I've been thinking about our conversation Friday. I know I've made mistakes, but I need you to understand. If you don't restore those loan guarantees, you're going to destroy more than just my credit. You're going to destroy your relationship with your family. How so? Sarah's talking about leaving, taking Emma and moving back to her parents' house in Ohio. She says she can't trust me anymore and she doesn't want to be around family conflict while she's pregnant. I felt the familiar twist of emotional manipulation, but this time I was ready for it. Marcus, Sarah's reaction seems reasonable. You lied to her about your gambling, about your debt, about our financial arrangement. Why should she trust you? Because I'm her husband. Because we have a family. Because sometimes you have to stick together even when things get complicated. What do you want from me, Marcus? I want you to fix this. Call the banks tomorrow, restore the guarantees, tell them it was a misunderstanding. Give me 6 months to get my finances sorted out. And if I refuse? The line was quiet for a moment. Then Marcus's voice changed, became colder, more calculated. Then you'll lose your family forever. Sarah won't let Emma see you. The baby will grow up not knowing you exist, and you'll spend your last years alone in that house. I felt something click into place. The threat was clear, unambiguous, and now permanently recorded. Is that what you're telling me, Marcus? That I'll lose access to my granddaughter if I don't provide financial support? I'm telling you that actions have consequences, Dad, for everyone. The recording app showed 12 minutes of conversation, more than enough for Patricia to work with. I understand perfectly, I said. I'll call you tomorrow with my decision. But I'd already decided. Marcus had just confessed to using his daughter as leverage in a financial extortion scheme. The game was over, and he'd lost. Wednesday morning, I didn't call the banks. Instead, I called Detective Ray Morrison at the Grand Rapids Police Department. Patricia had recommended Morrison specifically. He specialized in elder abuse cases and had a reputation for taking financial exploitation seriously. We'd spoken briefly on Monday to establish the legal framework. Today's call was more urgent. Detective Morrison, this is Ambrose Finch. We spoke about potential elder abuse documentation. Mr. Finch, yes. Have there been further developments? I have a recording I think you should hear. We met at the police station an hour later. Morrison was a solid man in his 50s with graying hair and the careful manner of someone who'd spent decades listening to family disputes that had escalated beyond reason. I played the entire 12-minute recording, watching Morrison's expression grow more serious as Marcus's threats became explicit. Mr. Finch, this is clear evidence of financial coercion against a vulnerable adult. Your son is threatening to deny you access to family members unless you provide financial support. Support that you've indicated was obtained fraudulently in the first place. What are my legal options? Morrison consulted his notes. Based on what you've told me about the unauthorized credit applications and this recorded threat, we have grounds for charges of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity theft, and criminal intimidation. The financial exploitation alone, given the amounts involved, would be prosecuted as a felony. What happens next? I'd like to interview your son directly. Sometimes, when people realize the legal consequences of their actions, they become more cooperative. And if he's not cooperative, then we proceed with formal charges. Mr. Finch, I need to be clear. Once we start this process, it becomes a criminal matter. Family relationships often don't survive felony prosecutions. I thought about Emma, about Sarah, about the family dinners that would never happen. Then I thought about Marcus threatening to cut off my access to my granddaughter unless I continued enabling his gambling addiction. Detective Morrison, my son made his choice when he decided to use my family as leverage in financial extortion. I'd like you to interview him. Morrison scheduled the interview for Thursday afternoon. I went home, worked my shift at North Point Tower, and waited. The call came at 2:47 p.m. Thursday. Marcus, his voice tight with panic. Dad, what the fuck did you do? The police want to interview me about elder abuse? I reported your threats to the appropriate authorities. You called the cops on your own son? I reported criminal activity to law enforcement. The fact that the criminal happens to be my son is unfortunate, but irrelevant. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then his voice took on a different tone. Calculating, manipulative. Dad, you don't understand what you're doing. If you go through with this, it doesn't just hurt me. Sarah loses her husband, Emma loses her father, and you lose your family forever. I started the recording app again. Are you threatening me again, Marcus? I'm explaining reality. If I get charged with a felony, I lose my job. If I lose my job, Sarah and Emma have nothing. Is that what you want? For your granddaughter to grow up in poverty because you couldn't forgive your son's mistakes? Marcus, do you understand that what you're describing is exactly the kind of emotional manipulation that got you into this situation? I'm describing consequences. Real consequences for real people who matter more than your hurt feelings. Who matters more? My granddaughter or the gambling addiction that put her family in financial jeopardy? Don't lecture me about gambling. You've been sitting on millions of dollars while your family struggled, and you didn't do anything to help. I didn't help because you never asked for help. You asked for loan guarantees, which I provided. You asked for co-signatures, which I provided. But you never asked for help with gambling addiction, never asked for financial counseling, never asked for honest conversation about your problems. Because I knew what you'd say. I knew you'd judge me, tell me I was irresponsible, lecture me about the value of hard work. So instead, you decided to forge loan applications using my credit profile and threaten me with homelessness when I discovered it. There was a long pause. Then Marcus said something that made my blood freeze. You want to know the truth, Dad? The truth is I never planned to let you keep working that cleaning job forever. Once I got the house payment sorted out, once I got ahead of the gambling debts, I was going to arrange for you to have an accident at work. Something that would make it clear you couldn't live independently anymore. The recording app showed the conversation was still running. Marcus had just confessed to planning. What? Assault? Attempted murder? What kind of accident, Marcus? The kind that would make it obvious you needed full-time care. The kind that would give Sarah and me power of attorney, access to your accounts, control over your living situation. You were planning to have me injured so you could steal my assets? I was planning to solve our family's problems in a way that worked for everyone. I sat in stunned silence, listening to my son describe a plan to have me physically harmed so he could gain control of my estate. Marcus, do you understand what you just told me? I told you the truth. I told you that I was trying to take care of our family's future, even if it meant making difficult decisions about your independence. You told me you were planning to commit elder abuse, conspiracy to commit assault, and potential attempted murder in order to steal $6.3 million. I told you I was trying to solve problems. The line went quiet. I think we both realized that the conversation had gone far beyond financial disputes or family disagreements. Marcus, I said finally, I think you should call a lawyer. Dad, wait. But I'd already hung up. 19 minutes of recorded confession, including explicit plans for physical harm and financial theft. Detective Morrison was going to be very interested in this conversation. Detective Morrison called back within an hour of receiving the audio file. Mr. Finch, I need you to come to the station immediately, and I'd recommend bringing your attorney. Patricia met me in the parking lot. Her expression was grim. Ambrose, Morrison played me portions of that recording. Your son didn't just threaten elder abuse. He described conspiracy to commit assault with intent to defraud. That's a potential life sentence in Michigan. Inside, Morrison had prepared a formal statement. The recording had been analyzed by the department's Digital Forensics Unit and deemed authentic and admissible. The content was clear enough to support multiple felony charges. Mr. Finch, based on this evidence, we're prepared to arrest your son on charges of conspiracy to commit elder abuse, identity theft, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and conspiracy to commit assault. The combination carries a potential sentence of 15 to 20 years. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Detective Morrison, what exactly happens next? We issue a warrant for his arrest. Given the seriousness of the charges and the risk of flight, bail will likely be set quite high, probably more than he can afford given his financial situation. Patricia leaned forward. Detective, what about the family? His wife and daughter? That's beyond our jurisdiction, but realistically, he'll lose his job immediately upon arrest. Whether he can maintain employment after conviction depends on the final charges and plea arrangements. I thought about Emma, 4 years old, asking why Grandpa was angry, about Sarah, pregnant, and now facing the possibility of her husband going to prison for trying to have his own father injured. Is there any alternative to arrest? Morrison and Patricia exchanged glances. Mr. Finch, given the severity of the crimes described in that recording, the district attorney is unlikely to consider alternative arrangements. Your son described planning physical harm to a vulnerable adult for financial gain. That's not a misdemeanor we can resolve with community service. I understand. There's one other thing, Morrison continued. We'll need you to stay available for the next few days. The arrest will likely trigger some dramatic reactions from family members. You should be prepared for that. The arrest happened Friday morning at 8:30 a.m., just as Marcus was leaving for work. I wasn't there, but Sarah called me immediately afterward, sobbing into the phone. Ambrose, they arrested Marcus. They said he planned to hurt you. They said he's been stealing your identity. I don't understand what's happening. Sarah, I think you should call a lawyer, someone who can explain the charges and help you understand your legal options. My legal options? Ambrose, my husband is in jail. Emma keeps asking where Daddy went. I'm 6 months pregnant, and I have no idea how I'm going to pay for anything. The pain in her voice was real, but I'd learned to recognize the difference between consequences and cruelty. Sarah, Marcus made these choices. He chose to lie about gambling, he chose to forge loan applications, and he chose to threaten physical harm to get access to money that wasn't his. But you could drop the charges. You could tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Sarah, I have a recording of Marcus describing plans to have me injured so you two could get power of attorney over my assets. That's not a misunderstanding. That's conspiracy to commit serious felony crimes. The line went quiet. Then, he really said that? He said he planned to arrange an accident that would make it clear I couldn't live independently. He said it would solve your family's financial problems. Oh my God, Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. Ambrose, I didn't know. I swear to you, I never knew he was thinking anything like that. I believe you, Sarah, but that doesn't change what Marcus chose to do. So what happens to Emma and me? What happens to my baby? I looked out my kitchen window at the small garden Eleanor and I had planted 40 years ago. The tomatoes were nearly ready to harvest. Sarah, that's going to depend on choices you make going forward. But whatever you decide, Emma will always be my granddaughter. For the first time in the conversation, Sarah stopped crying. What does that mean? It means we'll figure something out. 6 months later, Emma was helping me plant tomatoes in the garden behind my house. She was 5 now, more careful with the seedlings than I'd expected, concentrating hard on getting the spacing right. Grandpa, are these the same kind Grandma Eleanor used to grow? Exactly the same. Cherokee purples. They were her favorite. Emma nodded solemnly, patting soil around the small plant. Mommy says Grandma is watching us from heaven. I think she is too. Sarah sat on the back porch, 8 months pregnant now, and uncomfortable in the heat. The divorce papers had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Marcus had pled guilty to financial exploitation and conspiracy charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 5 years. He'd be eligible for parole in 3. Sarah had made her choice the day after Marcus's arrest. She'd driven to my house with Emma, sat in my living room, and asked directly, Ambrose, what do I need to do to protect my children? The answer had been complicated. Sarah needed financial stability, legal protection, and emotional support. Emma needed security and continuity. The new baby needed a safe environment. I'd restructured my estate again, this time setting up an education trust for Emma and her unborn brother. Sarah now managed property bookkeeping for Sterling Properties, a legitimate job that paid well and offered health insurance. She'd moved to a small house 3 blocks from mine, close enough for daily help but far enough for independence. Helen had come home from Seattle 2 months ago, taking leave from her consulting job to help manage the family business. We'd reconciled completely. It turned out Marcus had been telling her I was too grief-stricken to deal with visitors after Eleanor's death. Another lie among many. The scholarship fund Eleanor and I had discussed was now operational. The Finch Family Merit Scholarship, administered through the local community college. Recipients had to demonstrate work ethic, financial need, and commitment to honest achievement. No entitlement, no shortcuts. Grandpa, will you teach me about real estate when I'm older? Emma asked, carefully watering her tomato plant. If you want to learn, I'll teach you everything I know. Will you teach the baby too? If he wants to learn. Emma smiled, satisfied with this arrangement. She understood, with the clarity of childhood, that love came with expectations and effort came with rewards. Marcus wrote letters from prison, apologies, promises to change, requests for visitation rights. I read them all, but I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt with words. I still worked the night shift at North Point Tower once a week, not for the money, but for the reminder. Jenny had become a friend, and Rodriguez respected my work ethic. They didn't know I owned the building, and that was fine. The chess pieces had found their proper positions. The game was over, and accountability had won. If you believe respect is earned, not inherited, share this story. Comment below and tell me your city, because family betrayal happens everywhere, but justice is possible when people are willing to stand up for what's right.